Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Christina O of I Got You by Christina O. I don't want to do a long intro, I kind of just want to get right into this tutorial for a face mask. This is actually from Craft Passion. Joanne of Craft Passion, the blog, she provided this wonderful free pattern, well, set of patterns in different sizes, which has been a great help with, I think, everyone making face masks right now. So I did a little bit of tweaking for the nose wire step, but I did want to show you kind of a step-by-step of how I've been making the masks and having my assistants Claire and Denise making the masks. So if you go to the link below, I'm going to include it in the description box, Craft Passion's blog, they have a few different variations of this fitted face mask. The one that I'm showing you has the filter pocket and the nose wire. So if you actually went to my site and already ordered one of the DIY kits, this is going to be the perfect way to kind of follow along. If not, you know, you can easily use any kind of woven material. I would say focus on 100% cotton. Something that doesn't have too much stretch in it is preferred. You want it very densely woven. So you can use actually an old t-shirt. I know some people can use pillowcases, bed sheets, bandanas. You just want to make sure that you double up on the outer layer because you'd want to add as much protection as possible. And a filter, you can easily use, I know some people can use like a coffee filter, paper towels, the blue shop towels, you can just double line that. If you are able to find actual filters online, just be sure that it definitely is the CDC approved filters to insert into the pockets. Again, you want to change them daily. Make sure that you are changing them often, you know, after like 1 or 2 wears for short term. But if it's long term, definitely change it daily. There's definitely a bunch of resources online that are going to help you figure out what would be the best method of wearing the masks and taking care of them too. So, all right, so check out the link that I've had or included below of Craft Passion's patterns, and then I have a whole section on my site that has all the DIY kits and mask making supplies like elastics, all in that section. So it should be kind of like a one-stop shop for you to pick out what you need, and you can follow along on this video, okay? All right, so if you go to the Craft Passion link, you're gonna see a different, well, a set of different patterns you can get. So they have it broken down in 4 size groups. You have men, teenage and women, and then 2 young kid sizes. You have one that's 7 to 12, and then another small kid size, which is 3 to 6. I know that they're not recommending masks for children younger than 3. It can cause suffocation, which we're trying to avoid. So definitely, you know, do some research and make sure that, you know, whatever method you have is definitely the best. And all right, so they have it broken down by men and women. I have changed the size to just say like adult large is men, and then adult regular is the teen women sizes. I just feel like the gender part just kind of isn't what I want to use. So, all right, so each size range has 2 pattern pieces, so it's pretty simple. You have your main fabric pattern piece and then your lining fabric pattern piece. Now each lining layer, you're gonna do 2 pieces of each. For the bat print mask that I have, you're gonna cut 2 sets of this main fabric, meaning you're cutting 2 of the bat, 2 of the black or white, whichever background you want. Luckily for my DIY kits, I'm actually taking away that step to make it easier for you. So you're actually gonna get everything pre-cut to the actual pattern size that you ordered. So that way you can just kind of start sewing right away. Just some things you're gonna need before we even start making the patterns is you definitely want some clips. You can either use pins or clips, whatever's gonna help you kind of keep all the pieces together and nicely organized. And I have actually nose wires that I'll be including, and then either black or white cotton bone casing. Now these are actually used for corset making. I order these locally from a shop, Delicious Boutique. They're in Fishtown, around like Frankfurt and Girard. So they've been my go-to for a while. Anytime I'm in like a pinch for some lingerie supplies, they're always there for me. So shout out to them. They're great. So you can get these online too. Their online shop is open. I checked with Amy at Delicious, and they should have plenty of the bone casing available. You can actually order this per yard or per roll. I believe it comes in a 50-yard roll. So all you need for each mask is about a 5-inch strip of this bone casing. And so what you're gonna do is take the nose wire piece that's in the DIY kit, take a pair of tweezers, you're just gonna eyeball it and fold under like 1/2 inch on both ends. And try to make sure that you're folding it so that they're folded under on like the same direction. So you kind of want it like folded under like this. See that? And that's actually gonna get tucked in to the bone casing like so. And just take your tweezers and just kind of guide it through. So the great thing about the bone casing is that if you didn't include this in the actual nose wire application, this could tear through like the cotton that you're using or whatever material. So over time, after so many wears, it can kind of wear away at the cotton layers and it could poke out. And it could poke, you know, your face, which is what we don't want to happen. That'd be painful. So what I like to do is add a little extra step. It's just gonna keep things from poking through. This cotton's pretty durable and it's the same, you know, material as the outer and inner linings. So it's a great little piece to add in between the lining layers, and I'll show you how to do that when we get to the sewing step. So that's what you're gonna wanna do to kind of prep what you're working on before we start sewing. And so if you're someone that doesn't have the DIY kit from us, that's totally fine. I'm just gonna kind of show you an extra step of how to cut and prep everything. Again, if you ordered the DIY kit from us for these masks, you're gonna not have to worry about cutting because that'll be pre-cut and taken care of for you. Okay, so I like to kind of center the nose wire within the bone casing. And then what we're gonna do is you can either sew little seams in here, but I feel like this is pretty sturdy on its own. It's probably not gonna move around a lot because there's enough friction kind of within the casing that there isn't a lot of wiggle room. So over time, I think this will be fine. If you didn't want to sew like a little lock stitch right here on the ends to kind of keep it in place, I am not super concerned about it. I feel like this will stay pretty contained and in place over time. So set those aside, and that'll come in the next step. All right, so I'm gonna use the teenage women's size adult regular for if you're following along with my DIY kit. Take your fabric. We're gonna use black on black. Hopefully you can see all the details. Ooh, some dust and lint. Okay, so there are grain line markings here. So this fabric doesn't really have a lot of stretch, so we're just gonna kind of wing it. So you're gonna kind of map out what works. I like to kind of lay the patterns in this direction. That way you're kind of reducing the amount of waste of like the fabric and material that you have. So you wanna simply lay it out like this. When you print it out, also make sure that the 2-inch scale matches your actual physical ruler for 2 inches when you print it out, because then you're gonna make sure that it's the correct size for the pieces you just printed out before you like cut and sew and all that. So lay out the pieces like so. It's the easiest way. Kind of just tuck it in a corner together. I have pattern weights, but you can easily use, you know, anything to kind of weigh it down to keep it in place. I have a rotary cutter. You can either use scissors, but I think a rotary cutter saves a lot of time and it's just so much easier. If you don't have it, obviously you can just use scissors. Go ahead and cut the pieces out. Again, obviously you'd be standing up using a rotary cutter. Hope you guys don't mind my nails. I did them myself. I used the Après Gel X system. So far so good. It's pretty easy to use. I did the encapsulated glitter myself. I wanted to see if it was easy. It wasn't so bad, so I'm pretty happy with the results. Alright, so lining piece is done. Let's cut the main. Obviously don't sit like I did. It's better to stand while you're doing this. Alright, we're gonna pretend that I used the rotary cutter for that part. Okay. So go ahead and cut off any excess, or cut it the right way the first time. Okay, so now it's cut. So So if you have the plain black mask, and if you don't have the bat layer, obviously, you're only gonna cut, again, 2 pieces of the main fabric, outer lining, and then 2 pieces of the lining fabric, which is the inner lining. So the inner lining piece, the lining fabric piece, that's gonna be your filter pocket. And then the main fabric is what's gonna be on the outside. So for the plain black ones, obviously, again, 2 of the outer, 2 of the inner. That's the only pieces you'll need. If you're doing the bat lace, you're gonna need 2 pieces of this, or 2 pieces of the bat lace, 2 of the white or black, and then 2 of the inner lining pieces. So if you ordered the bat one, you'll just need to do a little extra step. But again, you're gonna have it pre-cut if you ordered the kits from us. So, all right, so now that you have the 2 pieces cut, I like to use these clips, and you wanna kind of prep the layers. So I like to start from the bottom to the top of the nose bridge. It's just a habit, I guess, I don't know. If you wanna do the opposite direction, that's totally fine too. Make sure they're matched up. I just kind of use 2 clips. All right, so that's how it should look. And the lining fabric, the inner layer, should definitely be about 1 inch shorter, or like, you know, more narrow than the outer lining piece, because you're gonna have a elastic channeling for the straps on the side of the outer lining piece. So I'll let it come into play later. So, okay, you got them clipped. What you're gonna do with the lining fabric pieces, the 2 that are kind of more narrow, take, this is where it gets kind of tricky. Okay, with the way that you have it clipped, take each side. You can either fold under, like eyeball 1/2 inch, and then fold under again 1/2 inch for a total of a 1 inch fold. And then you can just do a stitch down that, or you can just do a simple like 1 inch fold like that. So what that's gonna do is that becomes the filter pocket edge. So I'm just gonna do 1 inch raw edge just for an example. So that's how that should look. So again, inner lining piece with the sides folded under about 1 inch. You can use a seam gauge, or a sewing gauge, that's what I meant. Sewing gauge to make sure that this is like around 1 inch. Or you can just kind of do like the double fold method, which is like 1/2 inch and then fold under another 1/2 inch. That's totally fine. If you want to make it look nicer, it'll last longer. I mean, it's not going to damage anything, but if you want to take the extra step, it's up to you. So yeah, either way, it's going to look like that, and you're going to sew a little seam down to secure that fold. And it just makes it look much neater. And that's actually where you're going to sew in the label, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If you got the DIY kit, of course, from us. Okay, so that's how you prep. So now you have, for the plain black mask, or for any mask that you have the outer lining pieces pinned together and the inner lining pieces pinned together. You have your side seams folded under on both sides. Make sure that you know that they're actually folded away from each other. That's the way that you know it's actually pinned correctly. So you're not going to sew one where like it's the opposite and it's going to look kind of weird. We're trying to hide the raw edges. Okay. So once you have all that done, you should be ready to sew them together. All right, let's start sewing. Okay, so now we're at the sewing step. Again, if you want to hand sew this, that is entirely up to you. You don't have to have a machine. However, if you have a machine, this will go much faster and it'll be much easier to put together. So you can easily find little starter sewing kits at like CVS, Target. I think pretty much any like store that kind of has like a little bit of everything, you're gonna find like a little starter kit. So you can definitely get one of those. They usually come with like a few needles, and they're usually sharp needles, which is universal, and that's actually perfect to use for this kind of project. So totally up to you. I'm gonna use my Janome HT1000, and hopefully you can see everything. It's a little black on black, but for a pop of color, let me slap on a sticky note. Oops. Okay, got that all lined up. So you can grab either the inner lining piece or the outer lining piece just for, you know, a proper sequence. I'm just going to start with the outer lining first. So you have your outer lining here. I like to start from the bottom edge where your chin would be. Now this pattern calls for a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to keep it really simple for you. I have been just lining up the edge of the fabric to the edge of the actual presser foot. And I would say use like the universal presser foot for this. Align your needle to the center. Use for this entire mask, I would say 2.5 to 3 millimeters for the stitch length. So go ahead and line up the edge of your fabric to the edge of your presser foot. And that's kind of like an easy way to kind of line up for a seam allowance. It's a slight difference from the actual 3/8 inch line right there, so it's not a big deal. It's okay. All right, so go ahead and lower your needle, make sure everything's threaded correctly, your tensions are correct. You have a universal needle, a sharp needle to sew with. And we're gonna start sewing. So really simple, just stitch along the curved center seam. And I would recommend back tacking the top and the bottom. And just sew along the edge. Take your time, because it's a slight curve. Just kind of work it under the presser foot. And back stitch. And there you go. Really simple curve line. And then go ahead and do the same thing to your inner lining piece. Start from the bottom where the chin is. Same step. So again, with the inner lining piece, like I told you before, it's up to you if you're going to have this just a 1 inch raw fold under edge on the side, or do the double fold where it's nice and encased. So it's going to be like a 1/2 inch fold. Either way, this step's going to be the same for either style of fold that you're doing for the filter pocket edge. So again, I like to line up the folded edge to the side of the presser foot. And out of habit, I've just been having Claire and Denise like add the labels on the right side, well, the left side of the filter pocket lining this way. You can do it on either side. And that's also if you have DIY kit, you're gonna get the actual label with your kit. And also if you're someone who's trying to, you know, start your own clothing line or handmade brand, it's kind of good practice to know how to like sew in a label. All right, so this is where you kind of want to add the woven label if you have the DIY kit provided from us. I like to pick either or, it's up to you. I just feel like it's easier to sew from this side with the nose bridge facing up. So what you want to do is just simple back tack, straight seam all the way down. When you get about 1 inch down, you want to actually add in the label. I like to make sure that it's lined up right above where the actual letters are, because you want a nice clean line going over the top edge without, you know, being too far off. So I like to make sure that the edge of the label is actually right underneath the right side of the presser foot by the opening in the center. And that way that's going to keep it nice and smooth going underneath the presser foot. Just like that. Okay. Of course, my bobbin ran out. Let me change that real quick. So yeah, that's what it looks like on. Nice, simple straight stitch. I repeat that on the other side, and then I'll show you the next step. Let me change my bobbin real quick. Okay, so again, same thing on the other side of the lining pocket. how it's gonna look on the outside. 2 simple straight seams. And that's your lining. So that way the label's nice and neat and hidden underneath. So when you wear it, the label's not gonna be rubbing up against your skin. I noticed that some people that are making these, if they do have labels, they've been kind of exposing it more, so it's actually against your face, but you want to avoid that. So I like to kind of keep ours like hidden, and I think the filter pocket side is a good way to kind of tuck it into. So it's nice and discreet, doesn't bother you, it won't hit your skin, won't feel kind of itchy. Okay. All right, so what you're going to do next after you're done sewing together the center seams and the lining pocket side seams, you're going to want to remove the bulk along the curve lines, because if you don't, it's going to be a little tougher to sew the layers together. So you can either do this 2 different ways. I'm going to show you. Either take pinking shears if you have them, or you can cut little snips in. So I'm going to do both methods. And this way, this is a really fast way to reduce the bulk in the curved seam. Okay. So you're gonna have a nice little zigzag little shape along the edge, but that way when you fold it out, it's a much nicer curve. So if you didn't do that, it'd be kind of like bumpy all along the curve line, but you want it nice and smooth. So pinking shears is one method. Next method is the snips. You can just take your scissors and along the entire curve line, just do little snips every 1/2 inch. Okay, so that's 2 different methods. Not everyone has pinking shears. They're kind of like an extra pair of shears to have on hand, but yeah. So that's either this method, and you can see it right there, like it has like a nicer stretch along the curve. And so when you flip it inside out, same effect. It's going to be a much nicer curve from the opposite side. So that's 2 different ways to reduce bulk when you're doing curve lines like that. Okay, so now that you have all of this done, next step is putting the outer and inner layers together. So you're going to flip the outer lining out so you have the right side facing up, like this. Take the inner lining, the right side of that, lined up to the outer lining. So then you have this all together from nose bridge to chin. So what I like to do first is I would line up the nose bridges together and then go ahead and clip that at the top. And then do the same thing to the opposite side, so where the chin center seam is, go ahead and clip that together. And that's going to kind of help you line everything up easier. So you have the centers clipped or pinned together. Next, do the ends. Let me trim that actually. I'm gonna pretend that this little edge here is done. Let's pretend. Okay. So we're gonna take all the corners of the lining or the filter pocket and just kind of lay it as flat as possible against each other as you can. You don't want any kind of bunching or puckering to happen. You want it to be nice and smooth because you're gonna sew like an anchor seam on top. Okay, so now everything's nice and clipped together. Alright, so now you have everything clipped, nice and smooth. Just double check that everything's nice and lined up. Alright, next step is sewing together the outer and inner linings. Again, I like to start from the top edge first, and then we're going to use the same seam allowance, kind of like where you line up the edge to the edge of the presser foot, and that's just an easier way for you to kind of gauge the distance from the edge. Okay, so I'm going to actually remove the arm, or not the arm, but like the accessory box. You're going to want this free arm to kind of give you more space since there is a slight curve when you get to the center. So go ahead and sew a straight stitch along the top edge. When you get to the lining, the filter pocket, you want to kind of lift the presser foot so you don't have any bunching. And then that way it's all nice and smoothly you're sewing these together. Do the same thing with the other edge. Okay. You don't have to back stitch on these edges. If you don't want to, you don't have to, because it's going to be all hidden and kind of neatly tucked away afterwards. Again, line it up to the edge. Okay, so now you've sewn together the top and the bottom edges of the mask. So I'm going to do an extra step now. I don't know if a lot of people do this, but I just added this in. You're going to want to sew kind of like a basting seam, not really basting because you're using the same stitch length as you are for everything else. I like to add a little extra stitch on the side of the outer lining pieces. It'll be like an easier guide for you when you're folding under the edge for the elastic channeling for the straps. So I would do this extra step. It's just going to help you in the end. Oh, my thread just popped up. Hold on. Okay, let's just do a really simple stitch. Again, line up the edge to the edge of the presser foot, lower your needle, and just sew straight. Same thing to the other side. Okay, and that's going to help you later on. So, after you've done all that, you're going to have all these extra thread, tails, snip all that off. But I'm going to show you really quick how to reduce the bulk of the curve lines by the nose bridge and at the chin, because you're going to flip it inside out and then sew kind of like a straight stitch, like anchor seam on top. So you want to reduce bulk again. So we're going to snip all the tails first. So again, two ways you can do this. You can either use your little scissors or whatever you have to cut. And again, like we did with the curve seams of the center of the lining pieces, you can do little 1/2-inch snips all along. I like to add a little extra step where I do a little arrow at the center seam because you want to reduce that bulk because there's like 2, 4, like 5 layers of fabric technically. So I would go in, watch your fingers, and just kind of take out a little arrow of the excess bulk. So you're gonna have like a nice little gap right here. That's gonna help you when you're sewing over this when it flips inside out. So do the same thing to the other side. And make sure you're not cutting into the actual seam, because that's gonna obviously make your pieces fall apart, and we're trying not to let that happen. So if you're making the bat one, I would recommend cutting both the bat lace and the outer lining pieces, because that's going to be extra bulk. So I use duckbill scissors to kind of take away the bulk. So if this was the bat and like let's say white outer lining pieces, you would cut both of those. I'm just going to cut the excess edge of the outer lining of this black one. It's only going to be one layer here, but if you had the bat one, it'd be 2 layers. So that's going to help reduce bulk. So again, go ahead and trim that off. And you're going to do this to both the top edge and the lower edge, meaning like the chin area and the nose bridge. This will just make it a lot smoother to sew through, because if there's too thick of layers for the little top stitching that you're doing, it could break needles. Okay, so do the same thing to the bottom chin area. And I would only trim under like wherever the actual pocket or filter pocket ends. So I'd go in about 1 inch from that edge and start trimming there. Also watch your fingers if you have these duckbill scissors. They're very sharp, and I have cut a chunk of my skin off before because I wasn't careful. And just take your time. Okay, that's nice and trimmed. So now you only gonna have like technically 1 layer of fabric for it to really go through when you're doing the top stitch. So now that you did that, flip it inside out carefully. And if you didn't over snip, the pieces should be nice and attached. No holes anywhere. So you're gonna go ahead and like kind of separate as much as you can along the seam line of both the top and the bottom of the pattern or the mask. Okay. So this part you can either pin or clip. I like to kind of do like a finger press and flatten out the seam edge as much as possible. So I just kind of like wiggle it here and there. Again. And it's good that you do the basting seams in a way. Like if you were to do the bat one, I have a sample over here. If you have the bat one, you're going to be basting this together first, and then that way this won't shift around when you're sewing the inner, like the filter pocket to the outer layer. So yeah, extra step when you're doing the bat lace one is you'll have to do the basting seam, and I'll show that in a second. I just want to do the black one first. Okay, so that's how you do the plain black mask, or if you were to do like a t-shirt mask or like a pillowcase mask. Okay, so that's how it should look. And it's coming together. You can see it now. Everything should be nice and smooth. If you have some puckering here and there, just kind of go back, undo it with a seam ripper and try it again. Okay, so everything's nice and smooth. And then fold under kind of where that stitch line is from before. And go ahead and sew over it. I like to do a left needle all the way to the edge. I like to line up the edge of the fabric to the center of the presser foot where the opening is. And this is where you can do like a 3mm stitch length. Okay, just sew over the top. make sure this little edge of the liner pocket lining, or the filter pocket lining, isn't bunched up, and you want it nice and flat. Just sew along the edge. And again, you're just kind of like finger pressing the side, and that's how it should look. So yeah, it just kind of cleans everything up, makes it look nice and crisp with like the edges. I mean, you don't have to do this step. I would just recommend it because you don't want there to be like bunching. And also if you're putting the nose wire in, you want this nice and stabilized. So just repeat that on the bottom edge. Again, make sure your filter pocket isn't bunched up, it's nice and flat. See, sometimes it gets a little thick in the middle still. This is why you have to trim as much as you can away from the center seam. Thought I did. That's okay. If you have to like hand turn the wheel, that's totally fine too. Sometimes you have to do it towards the center. So yeah, that's how that should look. Make sure the filter pocket's nice and smooth against the outer layer. Go ahead and trim the tails off the sides. Okay, so this is where that little side seam that I had you sew on the edge of the outer lining is going to come in handy. That's going to be your guide to fold under the edge, so then you don't have a raw edge showing. And then fold it under again, just eyeball like 1/2 inch. You just need enough space so you can fit like a pair of tweezers to push your elastic or strapping through. Okay, so I would say clip that. Do the same to the other side. Fold under from that seam line, use that as a guide, and then fold another 1/2 inch. We'll loose thread. Okay, so now you're going to stitch a seam down to finish the elastic channeling. I like to sew it this way where the nose bridge is facing up. This is to make sure that you have like an even amount of fabric underneath the presser foot because your needle's in a left alignment. If the weight is kind of off, like the balance is off underneath for the feed dogs to catch, it's not going to sew as well. You're going to get some jamming. So since you're in a left needle position, you want to make sure that all the weight, well, not the weight, but like the thickness of the fabric is actually right underneath the left side of the presser foot. So go ahead and stitch down that line. I like to line up again where the fold line is, right where the center opening of the presser foot is. Use that as like your guide. Back stitch and just sew straight down. Back stitch at the bottom, do the same to the opposite side. Okay. All right, trim away the tails. Okay, so if everything went well, it should look like this. Everything should be nice and smooth, no puckering. You have your side seams all nice and done. You can see a little bit of a gap between the filter pocket and your outer lining. And then your elastic channeling should have plenty of space for hair tweezers to go through. Okay. So I'm going to include about a 30-inch long narrow elastic cord. This is about, I think, 2 millimeters. That's a really good one to have, especially because I like doing the wraparound style for a long-term wear. Ear loops are gonna hurt. I mean, I've tried to wear them while I'm sewing. They start to hurt after like a couple minutes. So I can't imagine wearing these for hours. They're gonna burn the skin that's on the back of your ears. It's sensitive, so be kind to your ears and others' ears. So easiest way to loop these through, you can use a safety pin. I would use tweezers, it's just faster. Any kind of tweezers will do. Grip the end of the elastic cord and just kind of work it through. And if it doesn't go through immediately, you can just kind of go the opposite direction and just pull it out. I like to start from the bottom of the one side up, because you're gonna come back down and then loop it through the elastic channeling on the other side this way. Because then that way it's like a continual like circle. So your elastic should look like that. So from the bottom of one side, through the top, and then out towards the bottom of the opposite side. Now, you can kind of knot it from the end, like about an inch, inch and a half. That should fit plenty of people. Now, if you're doing like a children's size, obviously kind of, you know, stretch it and fit it to the person. And then you can always like knot it at the end. It's not a big deal. That way it's adjustable. I think it fits most people, you know, it's a good thing. So it's definitely adjustable to whoever the wearer is, which is nice. So I've actually been shipping these out without the knots. I've been telling Denise and Claire not to knot them either. So they're gonna be kind of like sent to you this way. For people that actually have ordered the masks already made. So yeah, you can like offer it that way to people that you're donating to, or for when you're like making it for yourself. That's the easiest way to kind of finish off the elastic channeling. So yeah, that's how you make the plain black mask without the nose wire. I'm going to show you now how to do the bat lace mask version. So if you're okay with not having nose wire, you're done technically. But I'm going to show you the nose wire step with the bat lace on the white ivory outer lining, inner lining. So that's going to be next. Okay, so this is the version of how to sew together the bat lace mask. And again, I kind of did the steps of sewing down the curve seams already. So you're going to sandwich the bat pieces so that the right sides are facing, and then put 2 of the cotton pieces on top. So your bat lace pieces should be inside with the right sides facing together, and then the white cotton pieces on either side of it sandwiched together. And you're going to sew along that curve line, and then trim, you know, do little snips for the bulk, just like we did with the plain black mask. Okay, so we did that step just like before, and then same thing with the lining, the pocket filter. Let's go ahead and sew that part real quick. Again, we're going to put the label on. Same thing on the other side. This way you can see a little better with the white. Same as before, sewing the side seams on the filter pocket. And then, like I mentioned before, you want to kind of baste the bat lace to the outer lining of the white cotton too. If you want to pin this, go ahead. If it helps you, I just pin towards the center, then it keeps it from kind of shifting a lot. You want to smooth everything out as much as possible. Again, you don't want any puckering. So I just do some pins along the center. And if they don't perfectly match together, it's okay, because I mean that's going to be kind of just like the free edge. Well, not free edge, but like excess from the seam allowance. Okay, so everything's nice and smooth. Go ahead and do a little basting seam or a stitch along both top and the bottom. Duh, put your needle down. Okay. Same thing to the top edge. Okay, so if you did it right, it should be nice and smooth. Then this way it makes it easier for you to attach the filter pocket lining without anything shifting and bunching up, because you want it, again, to look nice and smooth. Let's go ahead and line up the outer and inner pieces. Again, right sides together. You're going to know because it's like, the seams like that, lined up. Go ahead and pin or clip the top of the nose bridge center seams together, and then the chin seams together. And again, pin down the sides of the filter pockets, the filter pocket lining. Again, you want to make sure everything's nice and flush up against each other, as flat as possible, like so, like we did before with the black mask, and then just sew down the top edge again. Alright, so again, lift your presser foot and make sure you're not bunching up the filter pocket. Do the same thing to the bottom edge. And then again, sew the little side seam into the outer layer. And just make sure that the layers aren't bunching up. Okay. And again, go ahead and trim all the loose thread tails. Okay, so this is where you're going to trim off the excess. Again, I'm going to trim the little arrow notches into the center seams of where the nose bridge pieces are, because it's going to be way too thick when you're sewing over this. Do the same thing to the chin area, the center seam of the chin. And again, you're not snipping into actually the seam, you're just snipping like right above it, giving it some space. Doesn't have to be a perfect triangle, just enough that it kind of takes out the bulk, just like that. And then trim away the bulk of the outer lining. Again, go in about 1 inch from where the filter pocket is, because really you're just concentrating on kind of taking away the bulk of the inner, like, center of the mask. Again, watch your fingers. Take your time on this step. These duckbill scissors are great for people that make lingerie, for when you're doing like elastic leg openings and like for bras, stuff like that. So for laundry, definitely a must-have tool. So with whatever excess you have, just with the one that's like bat lace, I would do extra snips on the lining, because you have 3 layers to go through technically now instead of 2 with the plain black mask. I just kind of go along the curved edge. Whatever area curves, just add snips there. Like every 1/2 inch, just eyeball it. That's gonna make a big difference when you're sewing that top stitch anchor seam. Okay, so just do all that, flip it inside out. And you're gonna feel it too when you flip it inside out and you're starting to like wiggle and separate the seam as much as possible. You're gonna feel that there's like less bulk along the edges, the top and the bottom edge. So make sure it's all nice and flat. And again, you're just kind of like finger pressing. Go ahead and clip. See right here, I can kind of feel it's gonna be a little bulky, so I'll probably have to like hand turn the wheel. Nice over that part. Well, that's gonna happen depending on how thick your fabric is regardless. So. Okay. Yeah, I can feel that center's gonna be kind of thick too. Okay. Alright, do left side needle, and let's add a little top stitch. I call them anchor seams, but again, line up the edge to the center opening of the presser foot. Alright, looks nice and smooth. Do the same to the opposite side. have to, just kind of hand turn the wheel over the center. And kind of feel it. It's kind of thick towards the center seam. And keep going. Alright. Trim off all the excess thread tails. This is how it should look. Everything's nice and smooth, nice and flat against each other. No puckering, no bunching. If it doesn't look like that, it's okay. You can always try again. Okay. So same thing as the black mask. Fold under where you sewed a little straight stitch on the edge of the outer lining, and then fold under. Again, just kind of eyeball half an inch. You can use a sewing gauge if you really want to be precise, but you can just eyeball it at this point. Fold under. Okay. And again, like I said before, you want to sew the channeling with the nose bridge pointing out, and that way you're kind of giving an even amount of bulk underneath the presser foot, and the feed dogs will run smoother. Right, do the opposite side. Alright, trim all the excess thread. Alright, so it should look like that. Nice and smooth. Looks really cute. Alright, so now that you're all done with the actual mask, you want to add the nose wire. Again, you already tucked in the nose wire into the bone casing in the beginning. So, easiest way to add this. Now again, if you want to add like a little stitch right there to keep it closed, that's up to you. That's an extra step you can take. If you don't, it's not a big deal. It's not going to really affect the performance of the nose wire in the mask. So I like to do first is take a sewing gauge or just kind of eyeball. I like to go about 2.5 inches from the center of the nose bridge to like the side of the mask, and I'm going to put a pin in there as a guide. Not only is that a guide, it's kind of like a stopper, because you're going to push through this nose wire in between the filter pocket and the outer lining. I know with the Craft Passion pattern, she has you kind of adding the nose wire right at the top edge. I like to do more of like a floating nose wire, not like floating where it's going to just kind of fly away, but it's going to be able to move around because not everyone has the same nose bridge height. So, you know, some people have like a low or high nose bridge, so this way it's going to be kind of more adjustable. So take your nose wire in the bone casing and kind of feed it through, work it in between the layers until it stops where that pin is, and you're going to feel that, and you're going to kind of wiggle it towards the top in between the layers. This might take a little bit of practice. Take your time with this step, and you can kind of see that it's already adding like a shape to the mask. Okay, make sure all the layers are nice and smooth underneath. So this is going to be all based on touch. You have to kind of feel this on your own. And then take your sewing gauge or your ruler and measure out about 2.5 inches on the top edge. Put a pin through. And so this is going to be kind of like the little casing area of where your nose wire is going to be. It's going to kind of float around in this area. So where you put that pin on the right side, line up your presser foot, your left side edge to where that pin is, and then use a left needle alignment, and go ahead and sew. Eyeball like an inch. If it's not an inch, it's not the end of the world, but I just like to do at least an inch stitch. Back tack, go down. With your needle down, lift your presser foot and pivot. Pivot that thing so it goes towards this side, the right side. This is going to take a little bit of practice, so don't worry about it. You probably just heard a train go by. Alright, so now you're going to kind of eyeball an inch from this curved edge while you're sewing a straight stitch. So it's going to be like slightly curved. If it's not a perfect curve, it's not the end of the world, but you want to make sure that your layers aren't bunched up as you're sewing over. And then just go ahead and meet the other side of that pin. I like to go a stitch or two past the pin that's on the opposite side, and that way when you pivot, it's going to kind of sew along the edge of the nose wire perfectly. So then back stitch, and then that's it. And then just kind of do like a soft bend. You can kind of feel the nose wire, it's going to move around a little bit, so yeah. So if it's not like a perfect, like, centered nose wire casing, it's fine. I'm not crying about it, it's not the end of the world. As long as it's in there securely, that's the whole point of you kind of adding this extra little pocket for it. So I know that people like to add it on the inner edge, but I feel like it's kind of nice to have it in between the cotton layers. It just makes it a little more durable, especially for like long-term wear. It'll help your mask last longer too. So that way you're not going to have any nose wire like poking out and like stabbing your face, because we don't want that to happen. That would hurt. So yeah, it should look like that from the inside, nice and smooth. It's going to take a little bit of practice to get used to kind of like moving the nose wire in between the layers, because you can't actually physically see it. You're going to feel it more, so definitely practice. But yeah, that's how you add the nose wire. So let's put some elastic cord through. Same thing as before. Take one end with elastic. Start from the bottom of one side and push that elastic cord through, and then pull it out the opposite side, and then loop it over, and then into the opposite top of the channeling. Okay, so yeah, if you're not using a nose wire, then go ahead and just finish the mask like I did for the first part, the black mask. But if you want to add the nose wire, obviously you want to loop the elastic last after you put the nose wire in. So just like an extra step, but I think it really makes the mask fit better, and it just feels like it's going to last longer with like a snug fit. So I like the whole idea of like kind of encasing it securely within the mask. So yeah, you're going to get all these pieces that you need per mask with your DIY kit if you order that from our site. If not, you know, you can definitely make this with, you know, supplies that are online. So if you do need nose wire and bone casing, I will have that available in the DIY kit section for supplies. I have more elastic coming in too, so I'll definitely try to restock as much as I can as I get them in from my suppliers. So yeah, that's how it should look, and we're gonna do a little quick try on and show you kind of different ways to tie on the strapping. Alright, so if everything went well and you're ready to try the mask on, like I explained before, there's two different ties you can use. You can use a non-stretch tie. This is actually corset strapping, so this is going to be comfortable for long-term wear. So this style is really easy, where you're going to take the top of the mask, just kind of push it over it. So this is going to take a little bit of tightening as you're wearing it, okay? So this way it's not pinching your ears, and then you're just going to tie it at the base of your neck. So I have a lot of hair right now. I apologize. I don't have a clip. I can't find it. So yeah, that's going to be one way. You can use a string tie. Use about 44 inches, like 44, 46 inches. That's the length you want for the string to be able to fit around the head. So that's more of like a back tie version. And then the elastic version that I have is going to be this style where you just kind of knot it at the end. This is about 30 inches long. Again, this will be coming with each kit that you get for the DIY kits, and you can kind of like adjust it. But most people will fit the 30 inches fine, so it's like an adult size. Really easy. Go ahead. I'm gonna get makeup all over this. Okay. So go ahead. And so this will go either high up on the back of your head, obviously over my hair. And this is actually a large size. I usually wear the adult regular, so you're gonna see that. Goes over the ear comfortably. And then that way it's kind of like snug against your face. Pinch the nose wire in, and you're good. So yeah, that's the second way. I prefer the wraparound elastic style. I just feel like it's more comfortable. I use it while I'm sewing as well for like a dust mask, so yeah, it's not bad. Nice and comfortable. All the measurements for the size chart of the mask, it's online as well, so it'll help you kind of measure what would be better for you. That way, like, you know, like just measure above here from cheek to cheek over your nose bridge, and then that'll be the way to kind of gauge what size you want. I think the large is like a 10-inch across, so it's a little large on me, but like the regular fits most people. I feel like that's like the most popular size that's been selling. So yeah, you made a mask. Way to go. Congrats. Hopefully this will help you make masks for yourself, your loved ones, and even for donation. I just want to say a big thank you to all the customers that have been ordering our face masks. They've been selling out quickly, I know. I apologize. It's still just a few of us working on it, and I'm trying to work on all shop orders by myself from home as well. So, you know, it's going to take time. We're trying to make as much as we can. My sister Angel's actually helping us with cutting and prepping now, so that should speed up everything more. So I know that we just sold out of the second round. There will be more restocks. We're trying to get as much as we can from my suppliers. So every couple weeks, if I can restock, that's the goal right now. We're probably going to need masks for a while, even with states kind of reopening and softening their lockdown orders. So yeah, so hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, definitely comment below. If you could, please like and subscribe to my channel. I definitely want to bring more videos to help everyone to make masks right now, because there is a shortage. So yeah, any questions, let me know. I'll do my best to reply as soon as possible. But you just made a mask. So all the links are below for the DIY kits, our supplies, also my other made to order items. I'm still accepting orders, but I'm not like forcing it upon anyone. So, you know, any orders right now are welcome and appreciated. So thank you for supporting us through this strange time. So I hope that everyone stays safe, and tune in next time. Thanks.